Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. Today is February 22nd, 2025. You're here with Robin and Scooby at In the Family Way Coaching, and we're here for our daily Bible reading. We are reading through the entire Bible in 1 year, and we are using the Day by Day Kids Bible, which has been written by Karen Henley. That is this book right here. We also have our daily calendar. So if you have that, you can go ahead and take that out and get ready to put your sticker on because we're about to read the Bible today. We are getting almost to the end of the month here. We have 1 week left. And so I'm going to be making next month's calendar and getting that shipped out in the mail for those of you who will receive it by mail. And Saturday is the first, I think. Saturday? Oh, yeah, Saturday is the first. Okay, I was thinking it was Sunday. Um, Saturday is the first. So I need to work on that so that we can get that picked up and out in the mail. Well, thank you for being here with me today, whether you are watching or listening via TikTok or on my site, or whether you are seeing me from YouTube or listening from your favorite podcasting app. Thank you for being here. I'm so glad God has led you here. And I hope that you are enjoying the daily Bible readings as much as I am. Well, for me, we had daily application yesterday that was definitely applicable for me. And I encourage you to send me a message sometime if you would like to share how God is applying the daily reading in your life. I know for me, yesterday, it was a big day for application for me because God convicted me on my heart for essentially for causing somebody to want to covet. And you remember yesterday in our reading, we had Hannah, and she couldn't have a baby. And the other wife of her husband had children. And she was pestering Hannah and basically making Hannah sad because she didn't have what the other woman had. And Hannah really wanted children. And so um, I found myself speaking loudly about something that that I am doing, and because a particular person was nearby, and I was hoping that they would hear me and think about, oh, that would be nice to do, even though I know that they probably really don't care, but it was still a way of doing what the wife did to Hannah, where she was, I was hoping somebody would be interested in doing what I was doing. So God convicted me on that. And so I wanted to share so that you could see what the daily application can look like in your life. And that God is so faithful, and He is teaching me all this year through each of our daily readings how He wants me to be and not be. So I thought I would share that with you, not to brag about my my sin, but to show that God is great and that He is refining us. And so that is what it can look like in your life too, even if you're not overtly doing something to somebody directly, then you can still be thinking it. And as we've mentioned in the past, thinking about something is just as bad as doing it already, because that's where the sin starts. And that's where the sin was in my mind. So I just wanted us to be on the lookout for that type of thing in our own lives, uh, because that is how it starts. And that is how God will show us that what we are doing is wrong, is by reading His Bible and taking heart and thinking about the lessons that we learn. I'm thinking about doing a how do I meditate type video, because I believe we have a wrong perception of what meditation is. And God tells us to meditate on the law day and night. And meditate means to think. And oftentimes when we think about the word meditate, we think of sitting there and just being quiet and clearing our mind of all thoughts. And that is not so. God wants us to think, not to clear our mind and be vacant. And He wants us to think about certain things because He is with us. And He wants our thoughts to be good and pleasant. Whatever is lovely, think on these things, He says. And we don't want to grieve the Spirit. And so he wants us to think about his word day and night. And so when we do that, he talks to us. And that is how we are convicted of things that we are not supposed to be doing or things that we should be doing, is by spending time thinking about that. So I wanted to bring that up because it's only through spending time thinking about the things that we read about and hear about that that we will learn them better. It's great to hear them and it's great to listen to them, but if we don't spend any time reflecting, thinking about what we are reading about, then it doesn't really give God an opportunity to talk to us if we're not listening for him to talk to us. So I just wanted to share that little bit with you today. I'm going to put this on pause. Scooby wants out the door again. So let's go ahead and get into our reading for today. We are reading about Samuel in the book of 1 Samuel, and we are going to cover chapters 2. This is a little bit longer of a reading session today, and chapter 3 and chapter 4. So we have 3 chapters to read today. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first section for chapter 2 is entitled Eli's Bad Sons. Now, Eli's sons were bad priests. They didn't obey God. People would bring gifts to the worship tent, and the gifts were for God. But the law said that priests could have some of the meat. The meat would boil in a big pot, and then the priest's servant would stick a fork into the pot, and he would pull meat out for the priest. But Eli's sons wanted meat that wasn't cooked yet, so they asked for it before it went into the pot. They said, "Give it to us. If you don't, we'll take it from you ourselves." And to God, this was a great sin. Eli's sons were acting as if people's gifts to God were not important. Now, Eli was very old, and he heard about what his sons were doing, and he heard about their sins. So Eli asked them, "Why are you doing these terrible things? God's people are talking about what you do. What they're saying is not good. If you sin against someone else, God may help you. But when you sin against God, who will help you?" But Eli's sons did not listen to him. Samuel grew bigger, and everyone liked him. God was happy with him too. One day, a man came to visit Eli. He was a prophet, a man who told God's plans. And he gave Eli this message from God. "Didn't I show you I was God? I took my people out of Egypt. I choose men to be priests. Why don't you act like people's gifts to me are important? You think your sons are more important than I am. You let them take the best parts of the meat. When people think I'm important, I do good things for them, but I won't help people who turn against me. No one in your family will live to grow old. Your 2 sons will die on the same day. That will be a sign for you. I will choose another priest. He will do what I want." 1 Samuel chapter 3, a voice in the night. Now Samuel served God, and Eli was in charge. And at that time, God did not talk to very many people face to face. Eli's eyes could not see very well, and one night he lay down where he always did. The lamp was still giving light, and Samuel was sleeping in the worship tent. That's where God's ark box was. Then God called to Samuel. "I'm right here," said Samuel, and he ran over to Eli. "I'm right here," he said again. "You called me." "I didn't call you," said Eli. "Go back to bed." So Samuel went back to bed, and God called again. "Samuel." Samuel got up again. He went to Eli. "I'm right here," he said. "You called for me." "I didn't call you, son," said Eli. "Go back to bed." Samuel didn't know God yet. God had never talked to him or shown him anything. God called Samuel again. Samuel got up and went to Eli. "I'm right here," he said. "You called for me." Then Eli knew that it was God calling Samuel. "Go back to bed," said Eli. Then Eli told Samuel what to say these words if God called him again. "I'm your servant. I'm listening, God." So Samuel went back to bed. Then God came and stood there. He called, "Samuel, Samuel." "I'm your servant," said Samuel, "and I am listening." "I'm getting ready to do something," said God. "It's something that will surprise people. I will do what I told Eli I would do. I said I would judge his family. It's because he knew the bad things his sons were doing, but he did not stop them." Samuel lay down, and in the morning he opened the worship tent doors. He was scared to tell Eli what God had said. But Eli called for Samuel. "What did God tell you?" he asked. "Don't hide what he said." So Samuel told Eli everything God had said. "He is God," said Eli. "Let him do what he thinks is good." Samuel grew up, and God was with him all the time. God made sure that people listened to Samuel. All the people saw that Samuel was God's prophet, and he saw God's plans and told them about him. Chapter 4. Bad News. God's people marched out to fight their enemies, but the enemy army won. So God's people went back to camp. "Why did God let us lose?" asked the leaders. "Let's take the ark box with us next time. It can save us from the enemies." So they went and got God's ark box. Eli's 2 sons went too. And when the ark box got to the army camp, everyone shouted. They shouted so loud that the ground shook. The enemy army heard the shout. "What are the Jewish people shouting about?" they asked. They found out that God's ark was in the Jewish camp. Then they were scared. "A God is in the Jews' camp," they said. "Now we're in trouble. We've never faced anything like this before. Who will save us? These gods made all kinds of trouble for Egypt. We must be strong. If we are not, they will win. Then we'll have to serve them. So be strong and fight." So the enemy army went out to fight God's people. The enemy army won. They killed lots of men, and they took God's ark box. Eli's 2 sons died in the fight. One man ran to town to tell what had happened. Eli was sitting in his chair, and he was sitting beside the road at the town gate. He was waiting for some news. He was afraid of what might happen to the ark box. The man got to town, and he told everyone what had happened. Everyone in town began to talk and to cry about it, and they made lots of noise. Eli heard them. "What's the matter?" he asked. Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes couldn't see anymore. The man went over to Eli, and he said, "I just came back from the fight." "What happened?" asked Eli. "The enemy army won," said the man. "Many of our men were killed, and your 2 sons are dead too. The enemies took God's ark." When Eli heard about the ark box, he fell backwards. He fell off his chair, and he broke his neck. He was very old and fat. He had led God's people for 40 years. The wife of one of Eli's sons heard the news. She was going to have a baby, and she heard that the enemy took God's ark. She learned that her husband was dead and that Eli had died too. She was so scared that she had her baby right then. The women helping her told her not to worry. They said she had a baby boy. But the woman didn't say anything. She just named him Ichabod, and the name means no greatness. She said, God's greatness has left his people. And that's the end of our reading for today. That was a lot going on. What do you think? Let's go back to the beginning where we talk about Eli's sons. So when the priests were given the offerings by the people, they were to put the offering into the pot and boil it. And then the servant would stick his fork into the pot and they would randomly pull out a piece of meat. And so it was God choosing the meat that they would have. And what Eli's sons were doing was that they didn't want to leave it up to God's choice as to what they were given. They were taking the meat that they wanted, the choicest parts, before the meat was cooked so that they could see it before it went into the pot. So they were taking from God. They were stealing from God. It was up to God to give them their portion. It wasn't up to them to take what they wanted. So this was very, very bad because they were stealing from God. And what God told Eli was that his son, he was allowing his sons to continue in this. So while Eli went to his sons and said that he had heard about it, so the people knew what the priests were doing, which was very shameful. And even though they knew that people knew and that their dad had told them, they were still continuing to do it. So they were not getting any better. And although Eli told them that what they were doing was wrong and that they should not be doing it, and who would help them, they were stealing from God, he did not remove them as priests. He let them continue in their sin, telling them that it was wrong, but he let them continue doing it. So God told Eli that he didn't stop them, that his sons were more important to him than God was. And so our takeaway today is that we are not to make anyone more important to us than God. It's not likely that we're going to steal an offering out of the plate that would belong to God. But what we can do is that we can refuse to give God what is due to him. And so that is, in effect, a way of stealing from him. And so we need to make sure that what we are giving to God is proper. We are giving to God. We are not withholding from him, but that we are making God more important than anybody or anything. And that is our big takeaway today. Let's see. And what happened to the Ark box? The enemy army took it. Wow. Tomorrow we will see what happens with the Ark box. God allowed the Ark to be taken, and he was not with them. And when the leaders said, "Why did we lose the battle? Let's take the Ark box. It will save us." They were not recognizing that it was God's presence with them that would be saving them. They were just treating the Ark box as though it alone was what was special. God was to be seated in between the two beings that were on the top of the ark box, and that's where he would meet with them. And he was supposed to go before them, but it does not say that they prayed and asked God to go with them or anything. They were not making God the most important. They were putting their faith in the box itself rather than in God and his presence to be with them. Isn't it amazing that even after God sent a message to Eli through Samuel, that and through another man, I think there was another man, a prophet. Yes. God sent Eli a message through a prophet, a man who would tell God's plans to Eli. And he still did not correct his sons. If someone told you that you were going to get in trouble for something if you didn't stop doing it, you may decide, oh, well, we'll see what happens. So it's almost as though he didn't believe that God was going to punish. He just said, well, let God do what is right. So he was just willing to accept it, but he wasn't willing to stop them and to stand up for God. And so that is another one of our takeaways here, too, is that when someone warns us that what we are doing is not right, God can and will discipline us for doing something wrong. And rather than wait for God to correct us, it would be better if we took the action to stop doing it because God is gracious. And if Eli had stopped his sons from doing it, God would have most likely spared Eli from dying at that point because God is very gracious. And when he knows that our heart has changed and we have corrected, when he gives us warning, he saves us. And we see that in other stories as well. I don't know where the story of Jonah fits in. I don't know if our Bible will skip over Jonah. I'll have to check that out. But that's a great example. Is in the story of Jonah, God was sending Jonah to the city of Nineveh to to tell the people that if they didn't stop doing wrong, he would cause the city to be destroyed, I believe is what it was. But Jonah didn't want to go because he knew that God would forgive them if they stopped doing sinful things. And he didn't like that. He wanted them to be punished. He wanted them to keep doing the bad that they were doing so that they could receive God's punishment. And that was not what God wanted done. He wanted them to have a chance. So God tells people in the Bible what he is going to do, just like when he went to Abraham and told Abraham that he was going to go check out the city of Sodom and see if it was really as bad as he had heard. God knew how bad it was, but he was giving Abraham a chance to ask for uh, safety for Lot and his family. And Abraham did. He asked for Lot and his family to be saved. And did God spare them? He did. So God is not looking for ways to punish us. He's not looking for opportunities. He wants to give us the chance to do what is right. He doesn't want to have to send consequences. If he will threaten to do so, and then if we don't do what we are told, then that is what will happen. And we see that here, that Eli did not take those warnings to heart. And so we want to be sure that if God sends somebody to us, um, that we listen because they are trying to help us to do the right thing. And for kids, that can be parents, and for parents, it can be other people who are noticing something that is not quite right. And we just want to keep our eyes open to not uh, make other things or other people more important than God. And that's what Eli was doing. So that is everything we have today. And I am wondering how God will use today's in my life to show me if I am making something more important than Him. And I pray for everybody here that God is teaching you and showing you things as well, so that you can benefit from every day's reading the same way that I feel that I am. Because God is so great to teach us things every day. He's so gracious to give us warnings and to show us what we are doing wrong so that we can correct those things. So thank you for being here with me, whether you are watching on video via Spotify or TikTok or YouTube or from my site, or whether you are listening on your favorite podcasting app with Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, or Spotify listening, iHeartRadio, Podcast, Podbean, Podfriend, Overcast, whatever your favorite podcasting app is. Thank you for being here today. And I am looking forward to seeing and everybody tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.